Welcome to episode 210 of the XS Noize Podcast, where we focus on in-depth interviews with musicians, artists, and people involved in the music industry. I'm your host, Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I catch up with Irish No-Wave Provocateur Skinner to discuss his debut album, New Wave Vaudeville. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Mark Morris from the Blue Tones. So check it out, and if you like the podcast and would like to support it, please subscribe for free on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Skinner, the project of Dublin-based multi-instrumentalist, singer and producer Aaron Corcoran, draws inspiration from New York's late 70s, early 80s no-wave scene for his debut record, New Wave Vaudeville. The album nods to the music variety freak show of the same name, held at New York's 57 Club from 1978 to 1983. In this episode, Skinner delves into the writing and recording of the album, upcoming live shows, and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Skinner. Hi, Aaron. Welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
It's great to have you. I always like to go back to the start. Can you tell me who were some of your earlier musical influences and how have they shaped your music?
My dad was really into like American folk music, like from even as far back as like the 30s and 40s. So he really liked like Bob Dylan and stuff like that as well. So I remember like listening to like a lot of like Woody Guthrie, Lead Belly, Joan Baez, Pete Seeger, and like Johnny Cash, stuff like that when I was growing up as a kid. I really liked that kind of music, particularly folk music, because it's like the original format of storytelling. You know, it's just like someone with a guitar or an instrument, and then they just kind of like tell a story. And I also liked it as well because it was one of the first kind of music movements to incorporate like protest songs and protest elements. You know, in my opinion, set the bar for like punk music further along down the line. It was kind of the original punk music. So yeah, grew up with listening to like a lot of that stuff and played like acoustic guitar, harmonica, banjo, a lot of just like early like American folk music instruments and stuff. But yeah, it's good. It's really enjoyable to listen to.
So when you first picked up the guitar, it was those songs you were playing all the time? And
pretty much, yeah. I remember playing like I think Knocking on Heaven's Door was one of the first songs that I would have learned, and The Whistling Gypsy, and trying to think what else. Maybe some like yeah, stuff like that. I would have started off playing just like kind of choral stuff, like it's like, you know, accompanying like music for like a singer or something like that.
And from then, you know, what age were you when you started sort of hearing your own songs and melodies in your head?
Well, I kind of took up the guitar when I was like, I think 7 or 8. My sister got one for Christmas. I wasn't really interested in music that much as a young child. It was actually my sister was like really into like, she was always listening to what's in the charts and stuff like that. But I had just been like, whatever, if I liked a song, I'd kind of just like sing it and stuff. But I don't know, like I always had like an interest in writing songs, even if it was just walking around the house singing them. But my sister got that guitar for Christmas and she never played it. So like a couple of months went by and I just like picked it up. I suppose it was like the first time where I felt like I was able to express myself kind of, you know, via like a medium. And, you know, I kind of found that at a young age and really enjoyed it. So I started playing the guitar. I taught myself. I went to lessons for like a small bit, and then I kind of just started teaching myself. And I started writing songs when I was like 8 or 9. I was playing in bands from the age of 10. I was friends with a bunch of people who were older than me in school, and they had a band, and I joined playing guitar for them. And I think I was in that, like when I was playing in bands, I was always a guitar player, but I always wanted to be a songwriter. But like when you're younger, like no one wants to listen to the songs you're writing. So yeah, it kind of just kept going from there. Just I've always written songs, and it was only like when I was probably like 13 or 14 or 15 that I really started to like get into being a songwriter more so than just a musician, I think. Yeah.
Can you remember the first song that you wrote that you thought, right, this is a really good song, I'm onto something here?
I remember I wouldn't say it was a very good song. It was a song, it was called Hell, and it was about Scooby Doo and a bunch of witches. And I remember playing
Wow.
it for my neighbor on Stephen's Day when because I think when I was like 8, I had my sister's acoustic guitar, and then the year later I got an electric guitar, and my neighbor wanted to hear me play it, so I played him that song. And I think back now it's really embarrassing. He was just like, he's probably like, "What's wrong with this kid?"
So nowadays, what inspires you to write, and how do you approach crafting a song? You know, what usually comes first, melody, lyrics, and how do they shape each other?
For me, like I know some people have like I suppose like a process, but I'm always trying to as soon as I get something that works, I try to like find something again that doesn't work and make it work. And I think it just keeps things fresher. Like I don't like to try and keep doing the same thing because you kind of just it just sounds the same. And I like the challenge of like doing something different. So like for the record that I just did, a lot of it was written using like if I'm walking around and stuff and I hear like a funny phrase or if I hear someone say something that I think is an interesting line, I usually write that phrase or that title down like a notepad or phone app like notes. And I tried to base a lot of the songs around one single phrase for this album as like a kind of like a challenge. So you start out writing the song with the theme in mind, kind of. And that was just something that I'd never really like done before. So I was like kind of keeping track of a bunch of interesting titles that I thought were kind of funny. And I'd write like sometimes I'd write like the lyrics then, or sometimes I might have had like a piece of music from a couple of months or years ago that all of a sudden this theme and these lyrics work with that piece of music. So you just kind of add them in. And a lot of the songs were done like that where they weren't really written. Some of them were written very cohesively and with an idea in mind. And then a lot of them were kind of Frankenstein things where like it was like this guitar part here and these lyrics here and this drum beat here. And it's always really satisfying when you can make one good thing out of a bunch of really average things. So yeah, like that was my process for that, and I'm currently working out a new one at the moment. I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but I have started writing stuff for like
Right.
the next record as well.
Well, let's talk about the debut one first. New Wave Vaudeville is out today.
Mm.
It's going down very well. I think it's brilliant. Been really, really enjoying it, and it's got some really good reviews. So, how does it feel that it's out?
It feels like a bit of a relief. I think I've talked to a bunch of bands and musicians who've released like albums and stuff, and we all kind of have a similar feeling of like when it's released, it's a relief for the artist in some instances because it's like the slate's kind of wiped clean again. So you've kind of spent like a year, building up this whole thing, and like yeah, it's just refreshing. You just have like a brand new like slate where you can go out and do it again. And also, I suppose it's kind of cool. Like I've been like listening to this music for like nearly like a year and a half, and like the rest of the world's only hearing it now. And like that's so interesting to me to have all these people kind of like hearing stuff that I've been listening to for bloody ages. Like, but yeah, it's a great feeling. And any artist, the ultimate goal, is to create a body of work that you submit out to the world, and hopefully, if you're doing your job properly, you inspire people through your work, and then that snowballs. Someone else picks up and starts writing songs, and then they inspire someone else, and that's all I think I need to do or that I want to do. That's what I see my role as, and this is just trying to inspire people the same way that I was inspired by other bands and other musicians making music.
New Wave Vaudeville, it's inspired by the New York no-wave scene in the late 70s and early 80s. When did you first learn about this scene?
I think I learned about it. It must have been 2017, maybe 2016, maybe 2018. We say 2017. I think I just came across it. I can't really remember, but I think there was a YouTube page and it only had like 100 subscribers, and it was just this guy. I'll have to get the name of it for you again, but it was just like this one guy, and he basically was just posting all these deep cuts of this no wave music. He was obviously a fanatic, and he had all these records, and he was ripping all the vinyl records and then putting them onto YouTube because like Spotify and everything wasn't going to play any of these bands. I mean, most of their labels probably dissolved 45 years ago. And I think I just stumbled across it, and I just found all these crazy bands, like stuff that I'd like never heard before, where it was just totally wild. And I just thought it was such interesting music. And I thought, like, wow, look, I've never really heard anyone talking about this. I've never even heard of many bands being like particularly like inspired by it. And I found it at a time when, even though the music was very chaotic, it made a lot of sense to me. And like, I thought it was a true representation of how I experienced the world, rather than like a lot of the stuff that was popular at the time or being played on the radio. Like the chaos, I thought was a better representation of like what like life actually is like every day, because it's not straightforward. So I really related to that music, and because it was like no one really listened to it or like ever. I rarely ever meet people who are really into it. So I suppose I just kind of wanted to take that and maybe give it a wider representation to other people, because I think it's important music and people can like learn a lot from it, about freedom and creativity and just doing what you feel. And if you're doing something that like what you feel and you're doing it like honestly, it's much better than trying to rip, like just trying to fake something all the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what music kind of means to me. Yeah.
And you also produced the album, which is fantastic. It sounds fantastic. Who else was involved in the album?
So myself and Reen Trench. So Reen Trench was the audio engineer on the record, and we recorded it in his studio. And I'd been recording stuff for years myself. I taught myself, and I'd also had a bit of like from like working in different studios or with different mixers and stuff. I kind of like developed a lot of skills that were taught to me. But for the most part, I was self-taught, and everything I'd done up until that point, I recorded myself. So I kind of, for this album, I wanted to try and like go to a professional studio because I'd just been doing it in like my bedroom, or like I have a small makeshift studio in East Wall, but it's tiny and it's got no windows or ventilation. So I thought like I'll try and like do it in a proper studio. But I didn't want to work with like producers or anything like that, because I find a lot of the time bands will like go and work with a producer because they think that that person will make their record better, and in some instances it does, but for me, if you're going to say that you're like an artist and you're writing these songs, like I don't really believe in that, in this kind of new this new thing that's been happening where it's a lot of solo artists proclaim that they're solo artists, but you go to their song credits and you see 4 or 5 people have written it. And I don't mind that because I think it's a collaborative effort. But in my opinion, like if 4 or 5 people are writing your songs and you're sitting in a room with them, every single one of those people should be credited on the song title. So like working with a producer for me, I didn't feel like I needed to do it because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And if anything, they just probably get in the way of what I wanted to do. But I think a lot of people don't take you seriously when you meet a band and they say, we want to produce our own record. Like if you sit down with a record label or management company, they get really scared. They're like, oh no, like they don't know what to do. Like they think that they can do this, but they can't. It's total bullshit. Like the band knows what they want to do. And I think that people should be encouraging them more to kind of like, produce their own records and stuff. I think it yields more interesting results than working with the same person that 50 other people have already kind of worked with already. It's a hot take, but
as I said at the start, it's turned out very well. It's fantastic. You must be very satisfied how it's turned out.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to do it. It was a big task, and I'd never done that length of a body of work and all the recording and the mixing and stuff. Like I mixed it with my friend Sean Corcoran. So I was gonna mix it myself, but because I'd never done a full album before, I wanted to kind of work with someone that I trusted and that I knew who would let me sit in on the mix session with them. And make those choices and changes, because a lot of the time when you send your stuff off to get mixed, you just get sent to some fella in the UK or just something like that, and like that to me is terrifying. Like I need to be there
Yeah.
for the whole thing. I need to be mixing it, a lot of it as well, and then have someone else come in who might be a little bit more professional and like be able to make those final changes. But for me, like it's very important to make sure you're there for that process and to tell people like if they're getting stuff mixed that you should work with someone that you can sit in with. Now, it's rare that you get them because a lot of mix engineers don't want you to sit in because you'll be annoying them. But I don't know. I think it's important to be there for it.
Well, let's talk about some of the tracks you were saying. You got inspired by some phrases that you heard, but Tell My Ma, it's an old folk song.
Yes.
Anybody from Ireland will know this here. So what inspired you to do like a different spin on it?
It was actually a song my mom used to sing it to me when I was a child. Like she used to put me on her lap and like sing that song to me. And I just always remember from like when I was a kid, kind of like a comfort song in a lot of ways. And I had this, I had that song and I had the kind of the drum break written, and I was like, oh, what will I say in this part? And I just kind of started humming those lyrics, and I was like, oh, it fit really well. And I kind of decided that like I love the idea of recycling in music, and that comes from folk music, because if you listen to like a lot of folk music, all the melodies are kind of just ripping off other people's melodies, but they changed the lyrics, and it was kind of interesting. It was like early sampling, except
Yeah, that's right.
you have to play it yourself. And I love the idea of taking like an old idea or like an archaic idea or an old lyric and revitalizing it, rejuvenating it, because I don't think things should be lost to time. Like, like our whole life, like things change and you can redo things. It doesn't have to end with one certain thing. So that was kind of the idea of telling me. I was like, I wanted to make a modern version of it. And still have it kind of be authentically kind of Irish as well. But yeah, I just like that idea of recycling in music. I think it's really fun, and if it's done tastefully, it can really like be quite cool.
Yeah, it really works. Definitely.
Thank you.
Sour Milk, was sort of inspired by Night Shifts and the Beautiful South.
Yeah. Yeah. I was working like night shifts for like a long period of time, too long. And if you ever meet people who've done prolonged shift work for a prolonged period, like they are different. It changes your brain chemistry, and that song, I suppose, is just about that total chaotic period in my life where I was always awake when other people were asleep, or I was always off work when other people were in work. And I was never around at the same time for people, and I could never go to gigs or anything like that because I was always working at the weekend. And yeah, it's just about kind of losing your mind, and how something as simple as a sleeping pattern can totally detach you from reality. Like you genuinely don't feel like you're a human being. It's crazy. You feel like you just live in this total dreamland, where you're kind of alone, except for the other people that work nights. So I remember like I was listening to that song by the Beautiful South, and I can't even remember the title of it, but there's a line where there's, funny how quick the milk turns sour, isn't it?
A little time.
Yeah, a little time. That's it. Yeah. And I listened to that, and I just like, that is so funny. Like it works so well in that song, and I just thought it was such a funny line, because it is true. Like life changes so quickly in the blink of an eye. So you might as well enjoy it and like live it up as much as you can, because it can change that quickly. And that's kind of what that song was about. My life changed dramatically during those 2 years. So yeah, yeah, it's a fun song.
My favorite track on the album is Spiraling.
Oh,
What can you tell me about that?
so that was a song. It was written as a poem, and I had that poem for a long time. And that song is actually very old. I think that was written in maybe 2019 or 2020. And I just had it for a very long time, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And it's kind of yeah, it's an interesting song. I wrote like a lot of the saxophone parts for it, and then I got Mason McMillan to come in and redo them. He plays sax in Skinner, and there was no drums in the original song either. That was all just, it was all just had like no drums, and so Freddie came in and like put like loads of drums to it as well. But yeah, a lot of people say they have said to me in the last while that they like that song, which I find like it's nice because I like to have as many different kind of genres and like different styles of songs in my music and in the album, because I feel like it leaves you a lot more freedom later on if you want to change things up, where you're not just a one trick pony. You can do all these different genres and you can combine them at will. So if you wanted to do like a funk record next, you could do it, or you wanted to do a slow record, you could do it. And that's why it's important for me to have kind of songs like that in as well, where it's not just loud aggressive punk, like it can be poetic and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, that's what I love about the album. There is all sorts of genres going on, and you're not just stuck to one thing. And if there's saxophones in a song, that's always good for me. A lot of people think it's uncool, but a lot of people say, yeah, that's George Michael, Careless Whisper, or Baker Street, or whatever. But no, there's quite a lot of saxophone in the album, which I really enjoy.
Thank you very much. That's all Mason McMillan for you there.
And I thought this was interesting. You had vocal training, and you were taught how to scream effectively while singing without losing your voice.
Yeah, that's from Dara. Dara from Gilliban. They rehearse underneath where my studio is situated, which is always lots of fun, when they come in and play and you're trying to do quiet vocal takes. But yeah, we're the two of us are in a building called Yellow Door in East Wall in Dublin, and it's like a giant building that has, I think, 20 or 30 rooms, and different bands have studios and rehearsal space and stuff there. So I met the lads through just seeing them in the kitchen there and stuff like that. And yeah, one of the days Dara was like, "Oh, what are you doing later on?" I was like, "I'm not doing anything, just in mixing some stuff." And he's like, "Do you want to come into our room and have a few beers or something?" So I went in with them and was just chatting with them and stuff. And they played me some of the Most Normal album. I think this was 6 months before it came out. They had like rough demos and stuff done of it. So like they were like, "Do you want to hear the new record?" And I was like, "Ah, yeah, I'd love to. That's great." So they played me some of the record, and then I think Dara was like, "Oh, do you make music as well?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I played him some of the demos for this album, and he was like, "Oh, like they're really cool. Like it sounds like you really like to shout, but you're not really quite there yet." He's like, "Do you want me to give you some lessons?" And I was like, you give lessons?" And he was like, "Yeah." Like he taught I think Andy from A Lethal Black Ooze. He taught him how to scream. He's done some stuff with I think with Dan from Gurriers as well. And I think Jamie Hyland from Mail is working with them now for some stuff as well. But I was like, yeah. So we just met up in a room, and it has very little to do with screaming. It has a lot to do with a 45-minute intense vocal warm up where you're kind of going day, stuff like that, which is crazy when you think about it. But I really never knew how much went into it until we sat down together, and he kind of told me like, "Yeah, man, before I go on stage, like I do this for like an hour." And it really makes you think about people who are going out there with that kind of singing style, that this isn't just something that they do because they're angry. Like they have to warm up. You have to warm up and do this, because if you don't, like you can't do 7 dates in a row on tour without warming up like that. Like you would just completely destroy your voice. And yeah, so we had a couple of like lessons, and like he really helped me. He's a great guy. He's really one of those people that I've met that's so influential, but also so down to earth, so nice, so kind and caring, which is rare. Like a lot of the time in the music industry, particularly
Yeah.
for more established bands. They wouldn't probably spend as much time with people who wouldn't be as established. So yeah, it was really fun, and now that I know how to do it, I'm still like perfecting it.
um, you talked about maybe you're moving on to the next thing now, obviously. So is there songs that didn't make it onto this album that might see the light of day later?
There's a bunch of stuff we have coming out. We did a like an unplugged kind of like session. We did that in December, and we recorded the whole thing. We did it in the Bello Bar in Dublin. So I've mixed that now, and we're going to be releasing that as like a live album. And a lot of it we just did covers of some of our favorite bands, like Beat Happening and like the Moldy Peaches and stuff like that. And we've also got like we went back to the studio where we did the album, and we played it in full, and we recorded that live as well. So that'll be coming out soon. Um, and yeah, like hopefully I'd like to get like a single out maybe for the end of summer again, something like that. I've got a bunch of stuff like written, half written. I just said half written, that I'm working on. And yeah, there was a couple of tunes that didn't make it onto it, but I don't think I'm going to be using them in the future either.
Well, you hit the road for a UK and Ireland tour at the beginning of February. The tour kicks off in Belfast on February the 5th at Voodoo. So what are you most excited about as you bring New Wave Vaudeville to the stage? How do you envision translating its sound for live performances?
I think what I love about the live shows is that we try not to really do the same thing twice. And like I often like tell like the lads that play in the band, like it's really important to have improvisation and not get up and just think you can get away with doing the same thing every night, because I think that's lazy, and I think it shows a lack of intuition and drive for a musician. Like people who get up and do that fucking hate like playing gigs. I mean, if I had to get up and like play the song the same every night, like I'd hate it too. So I think I love playing the shows because we try and change things a lot of the time, and we have like a rule where we try not to play the same thing exactly the same. And like I always tell like the lads, just like improvise, like do something different. Try to express yourself. And yeah, like playing live, I think should be that for like a lot of people. I hate this new thing of people playing to like backing tracks stuff, and I know some kind of music like needs it, but it never works. I think it never translates well, in my personal opinion. I just love to see a band go out and not be playing to a click. They're just out there and they're like expressing themselves. I think it's way cooler than being like super tight, although it is cool to be tight as well. But like, yeah, when you just see a band and they go out and they just really are going for it, you can't fake that. And it really resonates with people in the audience when you go out and you see someone giving it their all.
And would you change lyrics on live stage as well?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. Alternative verses. Or maybe I just forgot them and I'll just make them up as we go along.
As a Dublin-based artist, what's the musical community like in Dublin? Is it easy to get gigs? What's it like for people coming up, bands and artists?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really nice. There's loads of like the last like year I've found so many like newer, younger bands that have come out of Dublin that are just totally blown me away. Like stuff that I would have never heard 5 or 6 years ago when I was playing shows at their age. Do you know what I mean? It can be, I think, it can be like a little bit competitive. Ireland is competitive as a nation because it's so small. But I don't particularly like to feed into that idea that you have to be competitive and you have to, screw people over. I don't really believe in that. I think that historically the best scenes musically have been the ones where the bands and the fans and the promoters, held each other in high regard and helped each other. And that's kind of what I see happening with like all these new bands coming out of Dublin. They play shows together and they do this kind of thing, which is so cool. And there's no ego in it, there's nothing like that, because you can meet a lot of people that have a big ego about themselves, and it shouldn't really be about that. It should just be about playing music at the end of the day. But yeah, there's so many great bands. The venue situation, there could be more venues that are smaller, that are less than 300 cap, because you are, talking to a band who might only have like a single out, or something like that, and you're expecting them to sell out, a 300 cap venue when, like, realistically probably 50 to 100 people might show up. And there should be more venues where they're almost like a under 100 cap. Like Unshow in Dublin would be like one of them, and it's great seeing gigs there. I've seen probably the best shows of my life there the last year. It's an incredible spot and venue. But yeah, there's no support. Like, I mean, it's the same everywhere in Ireland.
Yeah,
like, we can't
even in
lie about
England,
it.
UK, Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's the same, regarding venues, isn't it?
Exact same. And like the real issue is like, and I have a huge gripe with it, is that there's no backline in the venues. Like, if you go anywhere in Europe, if you're playing in Europe, like, you're supplied with like the highest end backline. And also a lot of the venues, they'll put you up. They have accommodation built in because they're all government subsidized. They also feed you. Like, if you show up to anywhere in Europe to play a show, like, you're guaranteed that you're going to be fed and you won't be paying for anything. And like in, like, Ireland and the UK especially, like, it's crazy. Like, you have support bands coming to play a show, open up for like a main band, and the main band is requesting that the support band bring their own backline. Like, so what, you're getting paid like 50 to 100 quid to do that show. The taxi over is going to be 50 quid with all your gear. Yeah, I think it's just total bullshit. Like, for the size of our country and our musical export is absolutely astronomical. The size of what we are and the cultural impact that we've had over the last 5-6 years musically, I cannot get over how there isn't more support for bands or for music. Like, there's basically no rehearsal spaces in Dublin. There's like 2 or 3, but they're always fully booked out. And like, you have to be super lucky to try and get in. They're also extremely expensive to rent per hour. You know what I mean? So I just can't get over how there's no support when, like, it's having such a massive cultural impact around the entire world. And like, the government in Ireland, like, just doesn't really help artists at all. It's crazy.
We're lucky in Belfast. We have the OES Centre.
Yeah, and that's
a lot of bands.
Such a great facility. I was actually up there when we played Output. I'd never been in it before. So cool. Like, there's nothing like that here. There's just like,
which is mad, isn't it?
It is mad. It's crazy. Like, there's nothing. Like, it's insane. I genuinely can't get over it a lot of the time. Like, it's so hard to be a musician or be in a band in Dublin. The rent's super high, but just the sheer cost of being in a band. And like, I've been doing it for years. You don't make any money. Anything you make goes back into flights, accommodation, tours, stuff like that, recording. It's basically, if you got to the point where it's self-sustainable, where you're making enough money that you're not putting any of your own money in, then you're really on a winner. And like, for most people, that's like, what? Like, you're just breaking even. If you're breaking even, you're laughing. You're laughing loud.
So do you have any solutions?
I think what would be great is some sort of initiative that the government started subsidizing venues in Ireland, Ireland as a whole, that they just give them some sort of like stipend to buy backline every year. So like, there's drum kits there, there's amps, house amps that are there. So touring bands, when they're coming as well, they don't have to get a ferry over. Like, they know that they can just fly over with their guitars and they've got a backline there. It makes everything so much cheaper when you don't have to rent a van. Stuff like that. And yeah, just like trying to get, I suppose, accommodation sorted in venues and stuff like that as well. It really just, that they're the 2 things that really eat into an artist's income when they're touring and when they're playing live, is travel and accommodation. So if you sorted those 2 things, if you had 2 or 3 venues in Dublin or Belfast or, around the country that just had those things there, I think it would just save a lot of the costs for an artist, personally. And that's what they've done in Europe a lot of the time. Yeah. It works really well. Touring in Europe is great,
Yeah, why can't they do what they do and use their model,
You could say that about our transport system.
So Aaron, what ambitions do you have going forward? What's next on the musical bucket list for you?
I I suppose like this tour would be like the biggest one we've ever done. So that'll be like a lot of fun to be like in a van, like traveling around, get experience doing that. And I suppose like for me, I just kind of want to play as many shows as I can this year. You know, I really missed playing shows for a long time. So it's so nice to be back doing it. And, you know, I think that I need it for my life, you know, it's important to be doing it. So, yeah, just those two things. And, you know, I'm really excited to just, you know, start writing and recording like a second record. Like it's kind of all I want to do is just make records at the end of the day. So, yeah, the excitement has begun because it's like, well, what do I do next? Because I want to do something totally different again. So,
completely different sound then?
well, we won't say completely different, but you know, I want different instruments in it this time. Thinking about taking up the cello.
Right.
I've met like a lot of people this year who play different instruments and I've become friends with them. So I like the idea of almost making it like more of an art kind of project collaboration for the next record where we bring in a lot of different people and really try and make something that's it just stands out and is different from what everyone else is doing, and like utilizing instruments in a different way and strange way would be kind of what I'm thinking anyway.
Just a few more questions, Aaron. I like to ask my guests the following questions. For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
Best memories. A good question. There's that record with Bob Dylan from the late 60s, Blonde on Blonde. I remember I was really listening to that a lot when I was like 14 or 15. And yeah, I remember it being like a particularly fun period of like your life. You know, that age is quite like you're experiencing like a lot of different things. And yeah, I really liked that record. And lyrically, I think it's really funny and brilliant. Like a lot of the song titles and all, like Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat and stuff like that. But yeah, that record would definitely be up there.
Yeah, it's a great album. Classic.
Classic, yeah.
If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career so far, what would it be?
We played a show in Germany in July, and it was a tiny, small festival that was all organized by volunteers, which I thought was crazy. And it was on a beach in a place called Dangast in Germany. Some guy we met over there, he was from Ireland, he told us it's the Leitrim of Germany, which I thought was really funny. And it was on the beach, and he was like he couldn't understand why we were over there because he'd been living in Germany for like 20 years and he hadn't seen any Irish people. It's proper like in the middle of nowhere in Germany. Like, what are you guys doing here? And I was like, I don't know, they just asked us to play, and we showed up. But this festival, it was organized on a beach, and our set was like at 7 o'clock, and the stage is on the beach, and the organizers had timed that the tide would come in and go out before, or like, you know, by 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
But they timed it wrong. They got it wrong. So when we were about to go on, we walked up to the stage. It was just people swimming at the front of the stage, which was just gas. Like, it was probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And they were like, we were going to have to delay your set by like a little bit because, you know, like it's nearly going to flood the stage. It was just really funny to see like 100 people like swimming at the front of a stage. So they delayed the set, and then we went on. And by the time we went on, it was still up to people's like knees, but like they were still watching us. And I remember just watching the tide go out, and there was like a sunset, and like it was on the beach, and I was like, this is really cool. It was one of my favorite like moments ever. Just thought it was really funny.
I'll not need my swimming trunks for whenever you play voodoo in February. Like,
honestly, I'm all for playing more shows on the beach. You never know what's going to happen.
Lauren, that's me done. Is there anything you would like to mention before we wrap up? Anything coming up in the immediate future?
No, but I'd like to take a minute maybe just to shout out a couple of bands that I think are really good at the moment. Yeah. That like are, you know, I think more people should listen to. There's a band from Dublin called Innuendo that are great. There's a band called Spit from Dublin. They're cool. Another band, Delivery Service, Pop Pot, Shark School, and then Burglar as well. They're really, really cool. So if anyone's listening, you should check out all those bands. Personal favorites of mine.
So I assume they'll be on Bandcamp, places like that.
Bandcamp, Spotify, yeah, delivery service. I think we recorded a single together. I didn't. It's not my music. I just recorded it for them. But that will be coming out this year at some point. Definitely check it out.
Cool. Well, listen, Aaron, thank you very much. And yeah, congratulations on the album out today. Absolutely fantastic. If you want to tell everyone where they can get that.
So yeah, you can get the record on Irish Music Market. You can pre-order it there. It's also going to be available in record shops in like Dublin, like Spin Dizzy, Tower Records. We're going to try and get some up in Belfast as well. But yeah, you can pre-order it and you can buy it as well order it online from Spin Dizzy.
Yeah, everyone get on it. It's a fantastic debut album. Okay, Aaron, thank you.
Mark, thank you so much. That was a really enjoyable interview.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much.